When your physical safety and security are threatened, it's really hard to focus on emotional and mental health. Hey there, and welcome back to our channel. On this channel, we talk about mental health with a special focus on how it affects us as a DID system. Today, we're going to talk about environmental stability and how that affects our DID. Now, the last time we spoke, things were very chaotic for us. We had just moved back to New York. We didn't have a job. We were living with our friend and her family. And because of our living situation, we didn't have our cats. Somebody else was taking care of them. We also didn't have health insurance, which eventually meant we ran out of our psychiatric medication. This led to a combination of anxiety, depression, and my BPD symptoms became exacerbated. During this time, we continued to work with our therapist, but we weren't really going in deep. We were really focused on establishing some sense of stability. And in fact, when working with dissociative disorders or other trauma-based experiences, it's important to create this sense of stability and security before you go diving into trauma memories. This can look like making sure the system is physically and emotionally safe. If you are under a lot of stress, your nervous system is really wound tight. And when you're that activated, you're not really going to be able to process trauma in a helpful way. For us, our environment wasn't unsafe, but it was unsecure. We had a place to live, but it wasn't ours. We didn't have our own space, and we knew we would be moving eventually. This left the system feeling very unsettled, and our therapy appointments mostly centered around managing that, at least as far as I know. The stress of our situation, as well as an increase in symptoms of mental illness, mainly depression and emotional instability, really destabilized our system. We were switching a lot, and I wasn't always clocking those switches. I wouldn't know that we switched unless, one, I realized I was missing time, or two, the alter who was fronting realized that they were someone else. I had a lot of dissociation. I was in a constant state of derealization or depersonalization. I know that my sessions with my therapist focused on coming up with a plan for stability, work, housing, health, etc., or managing my emotional instability. I became really mentally unwell, so our sessions really became about safety. However, the others took over a lot of our sessions. I went months without having a session to myself, and sometimes I didn't front for therapy at all. And I don't know what was discussed during those appointments. I know there was some safety planning involved, but I don't know outside of that. It's not just physical safety that needs to be considered. You need emotional safety too. This can look like managing other mental health symptoms, decreasing self-harm, and managing triggers. It is also important that a relationship of trust is developed between the therapist and the person recovering from trauma. If you don't trust your therapist, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of helpful processing. That was important for our system. The therapist that we're seeing is the one who initially diagnosed us with DID. So most members of the system either have worked with him or know other alters that have. We also trust that he knows what he's talking about and has our best interest in mind. To some extent, we would talk about roles in the system, but because of everything that was happening both internally and externally, therapy was really about crisis management. There wasn't much processing or even discussions about system management, and that's an important piece in establishing safety. During the first phase of treating trauma, creating stability can also mean increasing system communication. It's important that alters learn to work with each other, not against each other. Increasing communication can also help with system awareness and managing amnesia. Trauma-based disorders are not unique in needing stability. Most mental health symptoms are going to be triggered or exacerbated by instability and external stressors. If you don't know where your next meal is coming from, it's going to be hard to focus on symptom tracking, grounding, or even taking medication. If you don't have a safe space to talk, therapy is almost pointless. When your physical safety and security are threatened, it's really hard to focus on emotional and mental health. So where does that leave us? Back in November, we finally got a job, and that has made a huge difference. It took some time to find some financial stability. We were behind in bills and we had to make some tough decisions, but we're finally not wondering how we're going to make it. It also means that we got health insurance. We were able to find a psychiatrist that believes in DID, and that was extremely important. She's willing to work with our therapist and accepts his diagnosis. This means that we get to have a more complete picture of our mental health and can take the appropriate medication. Getting back on antidepressants was a huge factor in our improvement. The other thing that work provided us is a routine. We didn't realize how much we needed a routine until we didn't have one. It also provides me with a sense of purpose and forces me to get out of the house and interacting with people. For the past few years, I've worked from home, and while going back to work in person has its challenges, it has improved my overall mental health. It gets me socializing and forces me to get out of bed, take a shower, and get out of the house. The other thing that's changed is we just moved into our own apartment. We're very grateful that our friend let us stay with her and her family for so long, and we do miss seeing her every evening. But it is nice to have our own place. Plus, we got our cats back, which is great. I'm still experiencing quite a bit of dissociation, but when we do switch, now that we have our own place, the others don't feel as much pressure to mask while we're at home. I'm still not clocking switches, and some of our switches have been very disorienting, but I think we're still technically in a transition stage as we get used to living on our own again. Communication is still crap, and I'm trying to be more intentional about initiating conversation. I've dealt with so much denial and fear of my own DID that I think I created barriers between myself and the others. We are trying to use some of our system apps, but not everybody uses them, and we deal a lot with not knowing who's in front. I'm hoping that now that our situation has stabilized, we can focus on system communication in therapy. My original script had me talking about how hopeful I was feeling. Unfortunately, in the weeks that have passed since I wrote this, my BPD has been activated, and it's really hard to feel hopeful when my BPD is telling me how awful I am and how awful everything around me is. But I'm trying to remain optimistic. We are honestly in a much more stable situation, and I'm hopeful that that stability will allow us to focus on improving our mental health. I will likely live with mental illness my entire life, but environmental stability will allow us to learn to manage that. For those of you who have been along with us during our journey so far, thank you. And for those of you that are just joining, welcome. We hope you find some value in our videos. Until next time, take care and stay well.